The funeral of Naledi Okoro was supposed to be a moment of respect and goodbye. The hall was filled with flowers, cameras, and powerful people dressed in black. Her husband, Tobias, stood at the front beside her golden casket, holding a calm, proud smile as reporters whispered about his strength. Just as the choir began to sing, the heavy doors burst open with a loud bang. A man in torn clothes stumbled inside, shouting, "She's alive! Naledi is alive!" Everyone froze. Guests gasped, others screamed. Security rushed toward him, but the man kept yelling, "She's not dead! You buried her alive!" The guards grabbed him, trying to pull him out, but something slipped from his hand, a small flash drive that clattered onto the marble floor. Someone picked it up and plugged it into the big screen that was playing Naledi's tribute video. Suddenly the slideshow stopped. A shaky video appeared. It showed Naledi, weak, pale but breathing, lying in a hospital bed whispering, "Please, help me." The entire room went silent. Gasps turned into shocked cries. Tobias's confident smile vanished. His face went white as everyone turned to stare at him. The man, still being dragged out, shouted again, "I told you! She's alive! He did this to her!" Cameras flashed. Reporters started recording. The funeral had just turned into a scandal, and in that one moment, every secret Tobias tried to bury was about to rise with the truth. 3 days before Naledi Okoro's funeral, something strange happened. A charity worker walking near the Mzima River found a diamond ring glinting in the sand, Naledi's wedding ring. Everyone recognized it. The news had shown it in every picture of her. But there was no body, no trace of her car, nothing but that ring. Still, her husband, Tobias, insisted on moving forward with the funeral. "We must let her rest," he told reporters, brushing off police questions. People whispered it was too soon, too rushed, but no one dared challenge him. After all, Tobias Okoro was one of the most powerful businessmen in Africa. But one man knew the truth. Musa, a homeless man who often slept near the riverbank, had seen something that night. He saw the car crash, or what looked like one. He saw Tobias standing there making a phone call, and later, he saw men loading someone into a van. Musa swore the woman was still breathing. He tried to tell the police, but they laughed at him, calling him crazy. So he kept quiet, until the day of the funeral. When Musa heard that Tobias was burying Naledi, rage and fear burned inside him. He knew she wasn't dead. He'd even found a flash drive near the crash site, a drive that contained a short, grainy video of Naledi in a hospital bed, alive but weak. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing: she needed help. So, on the day of the funeral, he cleaned himself up as best as he could, clutched the flash drive, and made his way to the grand hall. As the guests cried fake tears and the cameras rolled, Musa burst through the doors shouting, "She's alive! You're all being lied to!" Gasps filled the room. Guards ran toward him, and Tobias's calm mask began to crack. Everyone thought Musa was insane, until the flash drive fell and that video played for all to see. In that instant, whispers turned into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Guests pointed at Tobias, demanding answers. The truth Musa carried, the truth no one wanted to believe, was now playing on the big screen for the whole world to see. Naledi Okoro wasn't dead. She had been hidden. And the man who claimed to love her had just been exposed as the mastermind behind a billion-dollar lie. As the guards wrestled Musa to the ground, Tobias forced a fake smile and said loudly, "This man's insane. He doesn't know what he's talking about." His voice echoed through the hall, trying to calm the crowd. Reporters began murmuring, guests were whispering, and cameras turned toward the scene. But before anyone could remove Musa, the large funeral screen behind the casket flickered. The flash drive had started playing automatically. At first, everyone thought it was part of the slideshow. Then a shaky video appeared. The sound of a heart monitor beeped softly. Naledi Okoro, pale, weak, and barely conscious, appeared on the screen. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Help me, please." The room fell dead silent. One woman dropped her glass. Someone screamed. Others gasped and covered their mouths. Tobias's confident grin vanished. His eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. Musa, struggling against the guards, shouted, "I worked at your company's warehouse." I saw what he did. He tried to kill her. Reporters rushed closer, their cameras flashing like lightning. Some guests tried to leave, but the doors were already locked by security. The air felt thick with shock and fear. Tobias yelled, "Turn it off! Turn that off right now!" But it was too late. The video continued playing, showing Naledi hooked up to machines, struggling to breathe. In the corner of the screen, a reflection appeared. Someone standing by her bedside. And though blurry, people could see it looked exactly like Tobias. Chaos exploded. People shouted questions at him. "Is that you? Did you fake her death? Where is she now?" The once perfect image of the billionaire power couple was shattering right before the cameras. Tobias tried to walk out, but reporters blocked his path. "You said she died in a car crash," one shouted. "Then why is she alive in this video?" Musa finally broke free from the guards, breathing heavily but determined. "You thought no one would find out," he said, pointing at Tobias. "But the truth always comes out." The entire moment was caught on live stream, millions watching from home as the mighty Tobias Okoro stood speechless, trapped in his own lie. His empire trembled that very night, and the world began to realize. The homeless man wasn't crazy, he was the only one telling the truth. The room was in chaos. Reporters were shouting questions, guests were crying, and Tobias's face had turned pale as snow. His lawyer quickly rushed to the front, raising his hands and shouting, "Everyone calm down. This video is fake. It's been edited to ruin my client's reputation." But no one was buying it. The look on Tobias's face said it all: fear, guilt, and panic mixed together. Before the lawyer could continue, a woman's voice called out from the crowd, trembling but strong. "That's enough." Everyone turned. It was Amelie, Naledi's best friend. She stepped forward, holding her phone tightly. Tears glistened in her eyes. "You want proof," she said softly. "Then let's show them what you tried to hide, Tobias." The hall went silent again as Amelie played voice messages from her phone. Naledi's voice filled the room, weak but determined. "Amelie, if anything happens to me, it's Tobias. He wants the company all to himself. He said I'm in the way." Gasps echoed through the room. The lawyer's jaw dropped. Reporters pushed forward, recording every second. Amelie continued, "She sent me these messages 2 days before she died. I tried to warn the police, but Tobias used his power to cover it all up." She looked at him, her voice shaking with anger. "You thought no one would ever find out. But Naledi trusted me. And she trusted Musa, the man you called insane." Musa, standing at the back, looked down, tears forming in his eyes. He had risked everything, his safety, his dignity, just to make sure Naledi's truth was heard. Now finally it was all out in the open. The lies, the greed, the betrayal. Tobias's lawyer tried again. "These are private recordings. You can't." But Amelie cut him off. "Private." She begged for help. The crowd erupted in outrage. Guests who once respected Tobias now stared at him with disgust. Some shouted, "Monster." Others whispered, "He did it, he really did it." Cameras captured every second. The story spread online within minutes. #JusticeForNaledi started trending. People demanded answers. The police arrived, pushing through the chaos, asking Tobias to come with them for questioning. He refused at first, shouting, "You'll all regret this." But deep down he knew, the empire he built on lies was collapsing right before his eyes. As the officers led him away, Musa and Amelie stood together, both shaking but relieved. Justice had finally started to move, and the world was watching every moment of the downfall of Tobias Okoro. When the police reopened Naledi Okoro's case, the world held its breath. Everyone had seen the video. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Was she really alive? Musa, the man who crashed the funeral, stepped forward once again. He told detectives, "I know where she is. I've seen that place before." Many doubted him at first, but when he described the location in detail, the cracked walls, the rusted gate, the sound of water dripping, the officers realized he might be telling the truth. Early the next morning, police cars followed Musa to the edge of the city. They stopped near an old, abandoned clinic that hadn't been used in years. The windows were broken, the sign barely hanging, and vines covered the walls. "This is it," Musa whispered. The detectives broke the lock and stepped inside with flashlights. The smell of dust and medicine filled the air. Each hallway echoed with their footsteps. Then, from behind one locked door, they heard a faint beeping, the sound of a heart monitor. Musa's heart pounded. "She's here," he said shakily. The officers forced the door open, and there she was, Naledi Okoro, alive, fragile, breathing slowly but alive. She lay on a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, her skin pale, her lips dry. For a moment no one could speak. Musa's eyes filled with tears. He stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Naledi!" Her eyes fluttered open. When she saw him, she gasped softly, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. "Musa!" she whispered weakly. Everyone in the room froze. She remembered him. He was the kind man who had given her food months ago when she had tried to escape Tobias's abuse. He was the only person who saw her when she had nothing. Musa fell to his knees beside her, holding her trembling hand gently. "You're safe now," he said through tears. "You're going home." The detectives called for an ambulance immediately. Cameras soon arrived, and by the time she was carried out, the story had already spread like wildfire. Billionaire found alive after funeral scam. The world watched in shock as Musa, once homeless and ignored, became the hero who uncovered one of the biggest scandals in the country's history. News anchors called it a miracle of truth. People cheered for Musa on the streets. But for him, it wasn't about fame or money. It was about saving the woman who once showed him kindness when no one else did. Their reunion wasn't just a rescue, it was proof that courage and compassion can outshine even the darkest lies. The world woke up to breaking news that shook every headline. Billionaire found alive after funeral scam. The story spread faster than anyone could imagine. TV stations, radio hosts, bloggers. Everyone was talking about Naledi Okoro. Images of her being carried out of the abandoned clinic filled every screen. People couldn't believe it. The woman whose funeral had been broadcast live just days ago was alive. Within hours, the media camped outside hospitals, government offices, and the Okoro estate. The police confirmed that Tobias Okoro, Naledi's husband, was now the prime suspect in a long list of crimes: fraud, attempted murder, and embezzlement. But when investigators arrived at his mansion, Tobias was gone. He had fled the country in the middle of the night, leaving behind his expensive suits, watches, and even his private jet. For 2 days, the entire continent searched for him. Then on the third day, news broke again. He'd been caught trying to cross the border in a disguise, wearing a hat, fake beard, and cheap sunglasses. The once powerful billionaire looked like a desperate man with nothing left. Meanwhile, Naledi was recovering in the hospital, slowly regaining her strength. She spoke softly during her first press interview, her voice filled with emotion. "He tried to silence me," she said. "But truth doesn't die." The world listened as she told her story, how Tobias had taken control of her company, forged documents, and planned to stage her death to secure all her assets. It was a web of lies, years in the making, and now it was finally coming apart. As investigators uncovered more evidence, the truth became clear. Tobias had been living off forged signatures, fake charities, and corporate theft. The Okoro empire was built on deceit. Investors pulled out, banks froze accounts, and business partners vanished overnight. The once glittering empire crumbled like a sandcastle under a wave. Through it all, one name kept appearing in every headline: Musa. The homeless man who had stormed the funeral, risked everything, and told the truth when no one believed him. The same man who had been ignored on the streets for years was now being celebrated as a hero. The city's mayor gave him a medal for bravery. Donations poured in from strangers around the world. Talk shows invited him to speak. But when asked how it felt to be famous, Musa simply said, "I didn't do it for fame. I did it because it was right." Naledi later visited him in person, still weak but smiling. She hugged him tightly, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "You saved my life, Musa. You saved my soul." The cameras captured that moment, raw, emotional, unforgettable. By the end of that week, Tobias Okoro's name was no longer a symbol of wealth or power. It had become a warning, proof that greed always destroys itself. And Musa, he became the face of hope, the reminder that even the most forgotten person can change the world when they choose truth over fear. The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined every corner, reporters whispered updates, and millions of people around the world watched the live broadcast. This wasn't just another trial. This was the public reckoning of Tobias Okoro, the man who faked his wife's death and nearly got away with it. Naledi Okoro, alive and standing strong, walked into the courtroom wearing a simple white suit. Her calm presence silenced the crowd instantly. It was the first time she and Tobias had seen each other since she was rescued. When Tobias entered, handcuffed and in a prison uniform, he still tried to look proud. He turned to Naledi with a cold smirk and said under his breath, "You should have stayed dead." The whole room froze. For a moment you could hear nothing but the sound of cameras clicking. Naledi looked straight at him and replied softly but firmly, "You should have stayed honest." Her words hit harder than any scream. The crowd gasped. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. The prosecution presented months of evidence: bank records, fake insurance claims, voice recordings, and testimonies from employees Tobias had threatened. Amelie testified about the voice messages Naledi sent before her disappearance. Musa also stood up to speak, his voice shaking with emotion. "I may not have a home or riches," he said, "but I know right from wrong. And what he did to her, no one deserves that." The entire courtroom clapped quietly in respect as he sat back down. Tobias tried to defend himself, calling everything a misunderstanding, but the truth was too strong. The judge's face stayed stern the entire time. When the final verdict came, everyone held their breath. The judge spoke clearly. "Tobias Okoro, for fraud, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. This court sentences you to 25 years in prison." There was a beat of silence, and then applause broke out across the room. Some people cried, others cheered. Naledi closed her eyes, letting out a deep breath she'd been holding for months. Justice had finally been served. Tobias glared at her as officers led him away, but this time his arrogance was gone. He was just another man facing the consequences of his greed. Musa sat quietly in the back row, tears filling his eyes. He wasn't crying from sadness, it was relief. For the first time in years he felt peace. Naledi turned to look at him from across the courtroom, their eyes meeting in silent gratitude. She smiled and he nodded back, a small tear rolling down his cheek. As the cameras flashed and the world watched, one truth became clear: no amount of power or money could silence justice. Tobias lost everything, but Naledi and Musa gained something far greater: freedom, truth, and the strength to start again. Months after the trial, Naledi Okoro walked back into the same glass tower that once bore her husband's name. This time it was hers again, but she didn't come to rebuild the old empire. She came to start something new. The company that had once been all about wealth and power now had a new mission: to help the homeless, the forgotten, and the unheard. The people who, like Musa, had been ignored by society. Reporters surrounded her at the relaunch event, asking why she didn't just retire after everything she'd been through. Naledi smiled gently and said, "Because my story isn't just about survival, it's about purpose." The crowd applauded, but what came next touched every heart. She announced her new business partner, Musa. When he walked onto the stage, the audience gasped. The same man who had once been homeless now wore a clean suit, looking humble but proud. Naledi turned to him with tears in her eyes and said, "This man saved my life. Now together we'll help others save theirs." The applause was thunderous. Cameras flashed. It was a moment that would go down in history. Naledi didn't just thank Musa, she changed his life completely. She bought him a beautiful home in the city, a place where he could finally rest without fear. But she didn't stop there. She made him the director of community outreach in her company, putting him in charge of programs that provided housing, jobs, and education for those living on the streets. Musa took the role with deep gratitude and a promise: "I'll make sure no one is ever forgotten again." Under Naledi's leadership, the company became a force for good. They opened shelters, funded schools, and created job programs in every major city. Her story spread across Africa, inspiring people from all walks of life. Newspapers called her the woman who rose from the grave. Children in schools learned about her courage and Musa's kindness. Together they became symbols of hope, proof that even after betrayal and pain, redemption is possible. During an interview one day, a journalist asked Naledi why she chose Musa as her first partner instead of a seasoned executive. She smiled softly and replied, "Because he believed in life, even when no one believed in me." That line went viral. It was printed on posters, shared in videos, and quoted in speeches. As the sun set outside her new office, Naledi looked out over the city skyline. Musa was downstairs, speaking to a group of young people, encouraging them to never give up. For Naledi, this was more than rebuilding, it was rebirth. She had lost everything but gained something far more powerful: compassion, purpose, and a partner who reminded the world that kindness can change everything. Within hours of the shocking funeral scene, the internet exploded. The video of Musa crashing the billionaire's funeral, shouting, "She's alive," spread like wildfire. It was uploaded to social media by someone in the crowd, and within a day, it had over 20 million views. By the end of the week, it reached 80 million. Every comment section was filled with disbelief, tears, and admiration. People called it the miracle of truth. Clips of the moment when the flash drive played, showing Naledi alive in the hospital, were replayed on every TV channel. News anchors could hardly contain their shock. "This might be the most unbelievable story of the decade," one said live on air. Hashtags like #Justice for Naledi and #Hero Musa started trending across Africa and beyond. Strangers who had never heard of Naledi or Musa suddenly felt connected to their story. Everyone wanted to know who Musa was, the man who risked everything to tell the truth. Journalists searched for him, and when they finally found him, he wasn't in a mansion or fancy hotel. He was sitting on a park bench feeding stray dogs, the same way he used to before all of this began. When reporters asked why he did it, he smiled shyly and said, "Because sometimes heroes come from the streets. We just don't get noticed until something big happens." That single sentence went viral too. People shared it everywhere, saying it gave them hope. TV hosts, influencers, and even politicians praised him. "This man reminded us that truth still matters," one governor said in a speech. Musicians wrote songs about him. Artists painted murals of him and Naledi together. One even showed him holding the flash drive like a symbol of truth and courage. In just a few days, Musa became a household name, not as a celebrity, but as a symbol of honesty, bravery, and faith. Meanwhile, Naledi watched everything from her hospital bed, tears in her eyes. "He didn't just save my life," she told a reporter softly. "He saved my faith in people." Those words melted hearts everywhere. Messages of love and support poured in from all over the world. The story of Naledi and Musa became more than a headline. It became a movement. People started donating to shelters, volunteering, and helping the homeless in their own communities. What started as a moment of chaos at a funeral turned into a wave of kindness that touched millions. And when a reporter asked Musa how he felt seeing his face on TV, he simply laughed and said, "I'm not a hero. I just refuse to stay silent." That moment reminded the whole world that no matter how dark things get, truth and humanity still win in the end. Months later, the chaos had finally settled. The world had moved on to new stories. But for Naledi, one thing still felt unfinished. So one quiet afternoon, she returned to the same park where it all began, the place where she first met Musa. The trees looked greener, the air felt lighter, and on that same old bench, she saw him again. He was surrounded by a few stray dogs, breaking pieces of bread and smiling like nothing in the world could bother him. When he noticed her walking toward him, his eyes lit up. "Look who's finally back," he said with a grin. Naledi laughed softly and sat beside him. For a while they just sat in silence, watching the dogs chase each other. Then she finally asked the question that had been in her heart for months. "Musa, why did you do it? Why did you risk everything, your safety, your peace, just to save me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Because life deserves a second chance. And so do people. You didn't deserve to die forgotten." His words were simple, but they hit deep. Naledi felt tears welling in her eyes. She reached out and held his hand, the same hand that once held the flash drive that changed everything. "I owe you my life," she whispered. Musa shook his head. "No," he said gently. "You owe life your truth. That's all." As the camera faded, Naledi's voice narrated softly. "He saved my life and reminded me to live it truthfully." The final shot showed Musa tossing another piece of bread to a stray dog as the sun dipped low behind them, painting the sky in gold and orange. That moment became one of the most replayed clips online. People said it felt like watching a miracle, not of magic but of heart. The story of a man with nothing who gave everything, and a woman who found life again through his courage. It reminded the world that sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They just show up, feed a stray dog, and choose kindness when no one's watching.